So Mercury is the headline sponsor of Great Chat, and they asked me to do this talk. Ashley is based in New York. They knew I was in San Francisco. And I knew that Ashley would be in town. So I thought this would be a great opportunity to just do a Great Chat mini. So so excited to have Ashley here today. I thought that we would start this session off by talking about what's different today, because I think, founders are always thinking about brand they should be building for their companies. And I feel like in recent years, there's more of a conversation around like, do I have to build a personal brand as a founder? And these days, it feels like it is very, very noisy. It's always noisy, but even more so. And so I thought it would be a great time to have a conversation like this with founders in the room about how to think about brand building for themselves and their companies.
Yay. Oh my gosh. Do you want me to kick it off?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here. Can you hear me okay? Okay, fabulous. Yeah, I've actually been thinking a lot about this lately, and it's kind of apt to talk about this at TechCrunch Disrupt, since TechCrunch has been such an institution when it comes to like startup brand building and storytelling. So, as was mentioned, I started my comms career at Box, joined around 50 people. This was in 2009, not to date myself. And so like got to ride the cloud and mobile and enterprise platform shifts and build Box's brand over 6 years through IPO. And the sort of most interesting thing about that relative to where we are today is we largely did that through earned media, through publications like TechCrunch. So the big Box story, we talked very little about file sharing and lots about how cloud was going to change the way people worked, was going to change enterprise IT. And the places we talked about that were publications like TechCrunch, conferences like TechCrunch Disrupt. For feature launches, we would pre-brief like 20 reporters. It was insane. You simply cannot run that playbook today. You can no longer outsource your story to the press. That's not to say you shouldn't work with TechCrunch. If you could get that article, that could be like a really amazing boost for your company. But the way that startups used to build their brands in both consumer, but especially enterprise in the tech ecosystem was largely through media channels. And that playbook just isn't available anymore. And I think that's what's driving a lot of the creativity that is required, including like leaning into founder brand and other things. And so we figured,
that's a good place. I actually want to pause there for a minute, because when Ashley worked at Box, I worked at Dropbox, and something that we would hear all the time at Dropbox was, "Hey, Helen, I don't know if you've seen Aaron Levy tweet. Yeah, he's pretty good. If Drew could get on Twitter and, I don't know, maybe talk about Dropbox, that'd be really helpful for awareness. Maybe if he could say that we're really serious about enterprise, that would be helpful." And, our response is always like, yeah, that's not something he's going to do. And it was to me like such a great example, because, from outside looking at Box, it's like, Aaron Levy was such like a cult of personality. You could tell he was
very funny.
He was having fun doing it. It wasn't work. And I think one of like the true like first examples of like a personal brand that was so well tied in with the corporate brand and using a medium that was really natural and worked well. And so for Dropbox, I mean, like how that ends is like Drew found his own channel and his own audience and what made him feel comfortable. Dropbox is also a very successful company. So there are many ways to do this. But I think that just even that contrast, and you mentioning like thinking about the playbook that doesn't work, but I feel like Aaron was like ahead of his time, right?
Aaron was going direct before there was a term for it.
Yes.
Actually, and probably the fact that it wasn't the strategy is what made it so effective, right? I feel like there's so much pressure on founders today. Like, do you need to go viral on Twitter? Do you need a hype video for your fundraise? Do you need a podcast? And so I think one thing, so Helen and I are both early stage investors now with like marketing comms backgrounds. So we spend a lot of time with our startups. Like a lot of it's exploration with founders in terms of like, what do you want to try? What feels authentic? What feels good to you? And so what she just described with Drew is something that's happening at like all stages of company building, which is you want to balance like pushing yourself and trying things, but you don't want to look around and try to copy what everyone else is doing, especially if that doesn't feel like something you can be really like successful at and really authentic in doing.
Yeah, because I think a winning strategy with content is consistency, right? And so if you're not doing this day in and day out, it's going to be hard to sustain. It's going to be hard to stick. It's not going to be effective. And guess what? If you don't enjoy it, you're always going to find an excuse to put it at the bottom of your to-do list, and then you won't get done. And it's going to feel like work. And something that Ashley and I talk about all the time, we have this podcast and we do these little tricks to make it feel not like work. Like we have to have fun. The audience can tell. And so similarly, like if if you're a founder and the idea of being a thought leader on LinkedIn or tweeting all the time, like is just the worst thing in the world for you, you probably aren't going to stick with it. And that probably isn't going to be the best channel for you. But I promise you there is one. It's how to find it.
Yeah. With the sincerity or being self-referential, with the caveat that like something not being the right thing for you is different than going outside your comfort zone, because I never ever thought I would be a podcast bro. And I'm loving it. And so, pushing yourself to try things can be really good. But at the end of the day, it's really important. It's something that you like look forward to and like are able to grow from and keep doing. Because you have like a million other things to do when you're building a company. And so if the like marketing part is super taxing and draining, that's not only taking time away, that's taking energy away from other things.
One thing I thought of, because you mentioned we both focus on early stage, is oftentimes founders are starting from zero, right? Like you created your social media account, a corporate social media account, 0 followers. And you're like, how am I going to build a brand? How do I even start? And I've been in this situation a couple times, like mostly as an advisor, investor in those companies that I joined, were like a little bit, they were on their way. The one thing I've seen over and over again be really effective is to share knowledge. And so I think if you're starting from scratch, I'm seeing a lot of accounts that take off overnight, personal accounts, but also corporate accounts, like being the messenger of really valuable, useful data that your buyers or your customers would find compelling, make them better at their jobs. Because there's all this data that shows that when somebody teaches you something, you actually have like positive affinity towards that person. And so that reminds me, at AngelList, we created like this AngelList learning center. And like through the years, AngelList had like all of these blog posts, different pieces of the help center that like answered questions. And I think just a concerted effort to sort of like organize that all in one place to make this like learning center and like really make that the core of content. We grew the AngelList like Twitter account very quickly through that. And so I think that, and even though AngelList was like an 8-year-old company at the time, went through many different twists and turns, but I think at the time we were really focusing on venture. That felt like a moment to me where we were trying to like really claim that space and deliver like education, knowledge, and data, and that was effective.
Yeah, that's such a good example. Note that like AngelList wasn't just like tweeting or publishing stuff about like, hey, here are the features we have. Here's the problem we solved for you. It's like a level above. And I feel like that's what a lot of startups and founders understandably get wrong when you start doing this. Like you want to talk about the thing you're building and how it's helping solve problems for people. But the thing you always have to do is like meet your audience where you are. And that is both in terms of channel, but it's also topic, right? So AngelList taking a broader, more macro view of like, here's all this really interesting data, then like pulls people into being curious about your product and the feature set and all of those things. And this is when we talk about the shift from being able to like outsource your story to media to having to really like own and tell your story yourself. I think this is what's missing, is that actually reporters were doing a lot of work to figure out how to take what you were doing and make it relevant to a broader audience to pull them in, right? This is why like oftentimes founders get really upset. A reporter will name like a big competitor in a headline. And I'm like, no, that's like the best thing that could possibly happen, because way more people care about Google or Salesforce or OpenAI than care about like the tiny startup you're building that no one has heard of. And I think a lot of us haven't like built that muscle to do that sort of like editorial work ourselves of like, why should someone care if they don't care about your startup today? And so AngelList example is cool. Like you have to like tell like a 30,000 foot view story, or like find common ground with your audience on things they're already thinking about, and then like help break them down into like what it is you're doing, and have a call to action that's like sign up or, join our wait list. But I think that's a piece that's missing a lot. from like the more sort of like go direct form of storytelling?
Yeah. So, it is, we just acknowledge that it's pretty noisy out here. Question: have Ashley has the best hot takes. You listen to great time.
Wait a second. Yeah.
But it's really noisy. Do you think it gets even more noisy from here? Like it just gets louder and louder? Or do you feel like we're kind of at like the end point and things are going to swing back?
I think it's noisy. It's funny. So I live in New York and like I do not think about the AI bubble on like a day-to-day basis, but being in San Francisco, I feel like everyone's like, when are things going to like pop? When do they pop? How do they pop? So, I mean, certainly there's like a possibility of, whatever time horizon, things deflate. Maybe that it makes things quieter, but I actually think things are only going to get noisier. That doesn't mean like opt out of trying to like be the signal in the noise. Because I think there's a lot of mimicry right now. People are doing the same things. Very few people are breaking through with a truly resonant story. Like the things that are breaking through are path to 100 million ARR charts, fundraising hype videos. And guess what, guys? Those get really tiring. Like, I mean, granted, if they were my startups and they were hitting 100 million ARR, I would be very proud. But like, I think there's a lot of room for creativity and sharper storytelling. I think part of why things are going to get noisier, is extremely rational in that, I don't need to talk to anyone here about how transformative the AI platform shift is. But one of the reasons why it makes sense to be way more aggressive with your marketing right now is the sort of like technology buying process has completely transformed, right? When I was at Box, the reason Aaron was on stage at TechCrunch Disrupt and writing op-eds in Fortune and tweeting was basically so that we had the right to be in the consideration set for an enterprise technology buying decision, right? Like if a company was going to shift to like managing their content in the cloud, we wanted to be one of the 3-5 solutions they looked at. And the rest would come down to a bake off on like feature set and compliance and like what they believed about our ability to innovate and our future product roadmap. That's not how the game is being played anymore. Like individuals are the ones buying technology in the workplace. Like even IT departments are trying pilots. Like I think for individuals, having like being like AI tools feels existential, and for businesses, it feels existential too. And so we're just seeing this sort of like once in a lifetime, not just technology shift, but transformation and like the speed and the urgency of some of these decisions, which is why you're seeing those $100 million growth charts. And so what it means is actually like the enterprise technology startups who are building their brands today are going to look a lot more like Glossier than Box in terms of like how they are showing up on the internet. You have to be multi-channel. You have to have a more like emotionally resonant brand. You have to like meet the customer again and again until they remember you and think about you at that time when they're like, I actually do want to try a coding copilot or like some new technology. And so this is why I think things are going to get so much noisier. Now, maybe they'll be a little bit more distributed. It seems like everyone's just posting the same stuff on X right now. And there's a lot of room for creativity in both the channels and the messages. But it feels like there is this window where a lot of people are reevaluating how they work. A lot of businesses are rethinking their technology stack. And that just means like this is a little bit of an attention grab. And so I can only see things getting noisier and noisier, which means like the bar to breakthrough is higher.
Okay, I think I'll take the opposite.
Okay, good. We do this a lot on the pod too.
I feel like we are at peak and that humans, like our brains really just can't handle any more launch videos. And at some point, we're going to say, this is too much. I'm not even going to try. And you're going to like go back to sort of the older way of making decisions and trying things for themselves. I do think that, companies are going to 100 billion ARR overnight because we are in like an experimental moment. And allow, squeaky wheel gets the oil. I think people are trying a lot of those things, but time will tell whether it's, they're durable or that, that they're able to retain these customers. I think that what will be the thing that breaks it? What will be the thing that kind of like sends us back to normal? I think might be, so like this is something I'm paying attention to. Are we seeing more examples of startups that are like building in private or like just quietly sort of acquiring customers and building, great products and businesses and sort of emerging with something really polished. Because I think we've now hit year 5 of like build in public, right? And build in public's amazing because it's so democratizing and it's such a great, way for everybody to learn from one another. Right? I mean, truly, it's awesome. But I also feel like when something gets really saturated, right, like it starts to become differentiated and go the other way. So I feel like to everybody who feels nervous about the build in public and the, oh no, I have to take all my venture dollars and create all these sexy launch videos. Like, I don't know. I think that there's a chance that, things might start swinging the other way. And that picture of what you painted of what like early pops look like, where you have to be really thoughtful and strategic about placing the right story in the right channel, like that might have a place. Like really sick. Okay.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
I think I guess that I don't mean like you need to compete on noise. I think showing up, but again, there's like a lot of mimicry. A lot of people are doing the same things. And it's exciting right now. But that gets old quickly. And so I really think the things that are going to break through are the things that are different and not necessarily like hitting people over the head with as many tweets or as many, whatever the go-to-market is. I am a believer in the importance of brand right now. And so how that comes to life, there's a lot of different ways to do that. And yeah, there will be like monster businesses built in the shadows. Like not everyone has to run this playbook. And a lot of it is knowing your customer, how to get to them, like what they care about. And if you have a customer you already have a direct connection to or know where to find, and it's not on the internet and it's not by, having a really strong point of view and being loud, but something more subtle, then that is great. But I think like the majority of startup, like there's been a lot of venture dollars, like a lot of companies who now put a lot of pressure to grow really fast. And I think that's why I think like the noise is going to continue because we are in this weird moment where it's hard to see around corners and the future is non-linear. And so belief counts for a lot and vibes have replaced vision, momentum's replaced direction, personalities replaced brand. Like there are all these sort of like shortcut ways to get attention. And I just don't see that changing anytime soon. But on the individual company level, play the game you commit. Don't try to play the game everyone else is playing and like out noise them.
Yeah, I guess I'll take it back to early stage and sort of getting started. Sort of like our last topic before I wrap up and get questions from here. A question I get a lot is like whether a founder's personal brand has to match their company. So it's like, oh, hey, I'm personally kind of reserved. I've got these preferences, but I want to build a brand that's full, that's, different and would do these things, whereas I would do these things. And what I always say is like, that's a great thought. I totally get why you want to do that and good for you because like you want to like meet the moment. And right now it's loud and it's noisy and you want to figure out how to break through. But I promise you at some point, your brand as a founder and your corporate brand will converge. And I've never seen anything to the counter. So contrary to this. And so I think one thing I tell founders is like, what you can get a head start on is being able to articulate your taste and preferences, because even just writing that down or being able to articulate that to somebody is actually you forming a corporate. And so like, that's just like a quick exercise, but eventually, like, I mean, if we think about all the great luminaries, really great founders, and their corporate brands, like they are one and the same. And that just happens over time. So I think like an actionable thing as a founder is sort of like write down your own preferences, what you think like good taste is. And I think that's really good direction for the folks who are, their full-time job is thinking about your brand.
I love that. I'm like actively trying to think of a counterexample. And I can't think of one.
I'm sure there are.
I mean, I'm sure there are in like subsequent chapters of a company. But I've like seen founders go astray, like paying really fancy brand agencies to like create something in a vacuum for them. And it just like wasn't authentic. Like so much of a startup comes from the founder and like how you see the world. And so leaning into that and figuring out like how to express those qualities in a company brand over time. And also like brands take a really, like they take a while to, right? Like a brand only comes to life through like consistency. And that's just like an inevitable, there's a delay on that, but like we all have personalities and perspectives and taste built in. And so you have a founder brand on day one. And you bootstrap your company with that founder brand. And I think like getting comfortable with that and figuring out how you want to do that. And there's so many different flavors, right? Like how Dylan Fields of Figma shows up is very different than how Sam Altman shows up, very different how Christina Cassiopova shows up. And so like, I think that's actually like so inspiring. And it's just like edge you have on day one because who you are is actually like truly differentiated, even if your product isn't, even if you're going after the same problem as a lot of other people. And the fun thing about being an investor is like, that's what you're assessing when someone is pitching you, like why you, why this problem, like that is your core difference. And that should, the more you can extend that out as you like tell your story publicly, I think is quite powerful.